So 2025 is shaping up to be an exciting year in Winnipeg real estate. And here are 6 things you need to know whether you're buying, selling, or investing before you get into the real estate market. Welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Cody and I'm a realtor here in Winnipeg, and I am passionate about helping you find your next home that makes financial sense. And so without further ado, let's get into the 6 things you need to know for this year's upcoming market. And the first thing is that it's going to be a tough year for buyers. With the interest rates dropping, it has allowed more buyers to get back into the market, but we are still in a low inventory position, which means that competition is going to be fierce. The one thing that might be playing nice for buyers is that because it is 2025, 5 years ago was 2020, which was the start of COVID interest rates, which means that people that bought homes in that year are now up for renewal on their mortgage. Which means if those people have been waiting as long as possible to sell out of their first home, they might be starting to look into selling and buying a new place. Which means if you're a first-time home buyer or buying in that price range, there might be a little bit of extra inventory, but with the amount of buyers entering the market, I think that's going to outweigh the amount of potential extra homes that come up for sale. And so with that, the second thing is that if you are a seller, I think it's going to be a very good year for you. Now, obviously, if you're selling and buying back into the market, you kind of get both ends of the seesaw, right? You get the high prices for when you're selling, but you also have the high prices for when you want to buy. And so that's something that we have to navigate. And if you are in that situation and you don't know whether you should sell first or buy first, let's chat and we can go over the differences and which one actually is less stressful for your given situation. And even though it's going to be a tough year for you to buy a property, I think the third thing we need to recognize is that if you are planning to move to Winnipeg, I actually think it's a good year to move. Canada's economy has been struggling over the past couple of years, but in some of the bigger cities where you might be moving from, your real estate market actually took a big hit. Winnipeg's never really went down, but if you were in Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal or another big market, your real estate probably fluctuated enough that it actually corrected. And now it will be rebounding this year, which means if you need to get out and move to Winnipeg, you will actually be able to recoup some of that lost equity you had over the past couple of years. Now, navigating the market when you get here can be challenging, but if you're coming from another city, it won't be near as competitive as what you might expect. Plus, if you're working with a little bit of extra capital, you will be a very competitive, almost like a monster in this market if you're coming from one of those bigger cities. Okay, and the fourth thing, in a very similar vein to buying, is that I think it will actually be a tough year for investors. With the lower interest rates, there will be a lot more investors entering the market. And again, this plays into the buyer demand that what's going to make this market so competitive. But because it's going to be so competitive, usually investors get beat out by first-time home buyers and those upsizing. This is because as an investment standpoint, they need the rents to be there in order for the investment to make sense. Rents right now, even though they are high, they haven't really been going up at the same degree that prices have. And so if people are overbidding significantly on homes where the rents don't make sense for an investor, they're going to back out of the bidding war. And so if you're an investor, you're left with only really going after off-market properties or properties that need a ton of work that nobody else wants to do. Now, those are the properties I think you should target regardless, but there is lots of institutional investors that just go after homes, generally speaking, and don't really target specific ones. But if you're looking to invest in Winnipeg, I think it's best to actually go after something that you could potentially BRRRR, or if you live in Winnipeg and want to get into investing, I recommend house hacking because the duplex market is primed for you to buy this year. Now, I think that's a whole nother video to talk about why duplexes and smaller multifamily specifically are struggling and why I think it's a good time to buy, but I digress. We'll talk about it another time. Okay, and the fifth thing is that affects all of these categories of people is that I actually think prices will go up this year. Over the past couple of years, even with the high interest rates, we still had prices going up year over year. And with this year poised to be a very competitive year, I actually think the appreciation will be quite high. Now, you can decide whether or not that's a good thing for you. If you already own property, it most likely is a good thing. If you're looking to get into the market, it can be quite challenging. So there's a couple different strategies that I try to help my buyers when they are looking for properties so that they can actually get a property under contract and not just keep getting outbid. Now, this is where a lot of realtors like to just say, you got to go way over asking in order to get a house, but I don't like that method because when you overpay, it can actually take 5 to 10 years in this market for the appreciation to realize in that price that you purchased. right? So if you're buying something that was listed at 400,000 and you pay 500,000, it might take a minute for it to get up to that $500,000 in value. And unless you're planning to live there for a long time, I don't think that's a viable competitive option. Now, a lot of people think they're going to live in a house for longer than they actually do. So if you are actually planning on living in a place for 5-10 years, or you think you're planning on living there for 5-10 years, you might actually move in 3. And so then you're in a tough spot because you bought a place where the value hasn't caught up yet, and you need to sell it for more than you bought it for, ideally to make money. And then you're left with options of either doing extensive renovations or getting lucky. Overall, I do think prices are going to go up, but I don't recommend seriously going over asking price unless it makes sense financially for you. And to top it all off, this is sort of a bonus tip, but the sixth thing I think that is going to happen in this year is that as the economy continues to be in a technical recession, it maybe isn't felt or been labeled as a recession, but the economic data suggests we are in one. I think this is going to be a good year to buy businesses. The reason being is that because we are still in a recession and people aren't spending on consumer goods, the market is not there quite yet for businesses that are maybe struggling. However, for you to buy that business, consumer debt lending has come down significantly, which means there's this sort of overlap where you can buy a property cheaper because your interest rate is lower, but you're buying it sort of at a buy low price because the market hasn't caught up in terms of people buying that product or service that that company would supply. And now I don't like to time the market, but I do think that there is going to be opportunities for businesses that have struggled through COVID the past couple of years of this recession that have exhausted all the resources and they need a turn of ownership. And that's where you can step in, put in the right systems, put in the right people, and actually buy a business that's going to make you money. And once the economy turns to more favorable conditions, it'll be making you even more money. So there you have it, the 6 things you need to know for 2025 in the Winnipeg real estate market. And if you are at all interested in learning more, you should subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you can know when I send a new video, and reach out to me if you're interested in buying, selling, or investing, and we could talk about the next steps and how I would cater a plan for you specifically on getting you out or into your next property.